Good morning, good morning, good morning, beautiful people. We are here again, and this one we will call as Volume 1 of House of Chains. So, we start with the prologue, and we begin with Trull Sengar. Trull Sengar is being outcast from his kin, and he is part of the Tiste Adieu, which is one of Mother Dark's children. Well, she had 3, didn't she? So they are one of her set of children, and he is being outcast. He's currently being chained in this prologue, marked on his forehead with a circle with a line through it, and having his hair taken. So he has a braid, they're cutting that off, and then they're putting some sort of ointment on his head that will permanently remove his hair and leave him bald. So that's where we start the prologue, and we start in 1159 of Burns' sleep. So I think, if memory serves me correctly, we are what we would call 10 years ahead of the Panion War. So we're 10 years before the Panion War. I think that's the right date. So following on from there, chapter 1, we are in Teblar, and we are with a character called Carsa Orlong. And he is a very arrogant character, to say the least. He thinks quite highly of himself. He has listened to all his granddad's stories, which is Palak, or Palk. I'm not quite sure how you say that. I think it's Palk, who's his grandfather. He's told him all of his stories of how he raided through Retired and Sunnid to get to Silver Lake, and how they caused havoc and basically pillaged and did the R word through those particular places, and how they used to rule in his time. His father, who's called Sinig, at least I think that's how you say it, hasn't done the same thing as the grandfather. So he's looked upon as a coward, just because he hasn't done those same things. And Carsa has 2 friends. One is called Bayroth Guild, and the other is Delum Thord. And then when Carsa is going to go out on his repetition of what his granddad did, he's going to take these 2 with him. So these 3 are going to be a band of warriors from Urid, if that's how you say that. I'm never sure of the pronunciation of Stephen Erickson's words. I think it's Urid. They are a clan of Urid from Teblar, and they are going to rampage through Retired and Sunnid, causing havoc, mayhem, to gain trophies. Now, Carsa worships the god Urugul, and Urugul is one of the 7 gods in the rock of faces, or the rock of face. I'm not sure. The rock of face, I think it is, or the rocks of faces. The 7 gods. So Urugul is the first, who Carsa worships, and then you've got Baroque, you've got Kalb, you've got Thenic, you've got Halad, you've got Imroth, and you've got Sabal. Those are the 7 gods. Carsa goes to see Urugul before his journey, before his rampage of war, let's say, through these particular places. There's this kind of ongoing vengeance between these different clans, and Carsa wants to get back the nobility that they once had as the clan to be feared. He wants to regain that back, and he's taking, like I said, Bayroth and Delum with him. So we start on this. He goes to see his father. He looks for blessings from his father. His father's not prepared to give them, because it strikes me that his father's not a man of war. His father doesn't want that lifestyle, but his grandfather is. So his grandfather has blessed him, but his dad has given him his horse, Havoc. Quite an opulent name, really, for a war horse. So off they go on the journey. Prior to that, Dalis, who turns out to be Bayroth's fiance, which Carsa didn't know before this meeting. She's pregnant, and she's engaged now to Bayroth. Carter isn't overly pleased about this because he has a bit of a thing for Dalis. And it seems like Bayroth is kind of gloating a little bit that he's got Dalis. And Delim is kind of in between the two. He's like the go-between between the two of them, the peacekeeper, if you like. So they begin their journey, and nobody comes out of Urid to wave them off, say goodbye, give them the blessings on the travels. No one. And that concerns Carter a little. He feels like he's got Urgal on his side. He feels like he's kind of protected by Urgal. And as you read on through this book, it does kind of appear that way. It appears that through these fights that he has, where they should be outnumbered, he does seem to be protected by Urgal. And we do get the gods stepping out of the rock to watch Carter leave, and they have a conversation amongst themselves, saying that, well, if Carter isn't the one, then they will pick the child that's within Dalis and use that child to, again, reign over Teblor and potentially, other realms. So as I say, we go on this journey with Carter, Bayroth and Delim. We're heading to Rahide, and along the way, once we get to Rahide, we've had some fights already with Rahide warriors, and once we get to Rahide, we meet this pack of dogs, and what Carter does is he wrestles the main dog and gets it to yield to him. So now he has this clan of dogs with him as well, and they continue on in their journey. The sort of typical thing, really, of the R word, the pillaging. What they intend to do with the women is plant their seed in as many of the opposing clan women as they can to obviously outbirth them, create as many Urid born as they can, so then they will have more people in their clan is essentially what they're trying to do. And that's basically kind of the roundup of the first chapter. Then we go to chapter 2. And I've put down, has Carter found the beginnings of his tribe created by Tilanamas? They enter into a cave, and in this cave there's glyphs, and these glyphs have been written by a Tilanamas, and he talks about Icarium and how Icarium tried to save some people, and these people were potentially from different clans themselves, wider sort than the Teblor. These are people from different places that he's saved, and what he's done is he's split them up. If I'm understanding this correctly, he's split them up into different packs, different families, so he sent children with different families, and they've then gone off under the headings of these new clans. And what they're realising, Delim and Carter, is that these are their heritage. These are the heritage of their clan. So Carter doesn't really want to believe this, but Delim knows that there's some truth to this by what Carter is reading out to him. And the clans that they created were the Byrad, these are hard words, the Byrad, the Sanyard, the Falyard, the Urad, which sounds like the Urad of theirs, the Gelad, the Manyard, the Ruthyard, and the Lanyard. So the Sanyard and the Ruthyard sound like the Sunyard and the Rathyard as they stand already, the clans that they're already aware of, where they intend to go and do their pillaging, etc., through those particular clans. So there obviously is some truth to this historical glyphs that have been written down. But Carter wants to ignore them and not necessarily listen to what could potentially be historical facts that's been written by someone from this clan of Tilanamas. As I say, it seems that the three may have found the truth, that they have been inbred by the families that were separated. So they've inbred amongst themselves to create a population. Okay. Presumably we probably did that in our past as well. That's how somehow we're all kind of connected to each other. It's not a nice thought to think of, but, that must have happened, because we do often find that when we trace our family trees, we do have connection to, people who we wouldn't think we do. But so it must have happened. And they themselves took upon, within this story that's written in the cave, it says that they can no longer be a kind of a peaceful people. They have to take on, because of the the clans they're creating, they have to take on now this image of being murderous and sort of feared, to be people to be feared, to keep themselves hidden, to keep themselves safe, to keep themselves a people that nobody would want to approach. And that's for years what the Teblar have been. They have been this people in separate clans who you would not want to go, you wouldn't want to cross their lands, because they're a fearful, murderous people, so you don't approach them. And that's the way they've lived for years. But slowly but surely, that kind of stature is diminishing, and Casa wants to re-establish that. So in finding this, he's finding his heritage, and it's through necessity that these people decided to take on this persona and do this in order to save themselves and actually potentially live. So as they come from this cave and start on their journey again, they find what's called the forecastle. And the forecastle is rumoured to be a demon, chained to this wall that seems to contain some sorcery. But she's also pinned under a huge rock and has been there for a very, very long time. And Bathor, if that's his name, Bayroth decides that it might be a good idea to free her. They might gain her favour if they free her. So Delum is a little bit against the idea, but Casa too thinks it might be a good idea. They may gain her favour if they do this. So they do. They take the rock off her, and she escapes from the chains. They go to give her water, but she doesn't want water. She seems to be just coming round, just purely from the fact that the rock's been taken off her and she's been freed. Off the back of that, she then attacks Casa, and he is feared for his life. He's not a fearful man. He doesn't really fear anyone, but when she attacks, he's scared. He's feared, and he's actually crying. Delum then, off the back of this, goes to attack her. She then attacks him with such force that it splits his head, really damages him, whereas Bayroth just commands her to stop, just shouts at her and tells her she has to stop. And within this, we find out that, yes, Casa is the chosen one. He does have favour on his side from the gods, and there is a future ahead of him that Bayroth should protect him for. And when he gets to his end goal, Bayroth then needs to take a step back, like he is doing at this present moment, and allow her to step in. Now, she is actually called, when I find it, her actual name is Farkrul Assail. Now, does this actually mean for Karul Assail, as in the elder god Karul? Is this a play on the name? So for Karul, she will assail, because she's apparently saying that her name is Calm and she is the bringer of peace. But what she's sort of getting at is that her peace is in death. So does she work on behalf of the elder god Karul, and her name is a play on that, as in for Karul you will assail? I don't know. She seems to be the bringer of death. Is that right? That's the way I'm reading it, is that her version of peace is in bringing death. I'm not sure. So anyway, we've got Delum, and he's received this head wound, and unfortunately what it's done is it's messed with his cognitivity. He's now acting like one of the dogs. He's surrounding himself with the dogs now and playing around with them. So he's lost his human nature and has become more animalistic, more bestial in his behaviour. So Bayroth is concerned, whereas Casa sees that as a failure as a warrior. And Casa wouldn't think twice about killing him at this point, whereas Bayroth wants to sort of look after him and nurse him and treat him as the friend that he is. So Casa's quite a hard-faced person, really. Doesn't really have much empathy, I would say, for anyone. It seems again that Casa is protected because the lowlanders create fire, like a sort of sorcerous fire. They throw it at him and it has no effect, and then he slaughters all of them. But they, in the meantime, have captured Bayroth and because they end up in another fight, and they've captured Bayroth, and he's sort of tied up to this wheel, and they've already tortured him quite badly and told him to answer their questions and tell him about Urd. And because he's refused, they have brought Karsa out to witness them basically slice his throat and chop his head off. And then they ask Karsa, are you going to answer the questions? And he says yes. So they take him back to the lowlanders, and the intention is to give him to Master Silgar, who is the slave owner. So he gets put in the... Oh, and in the meantime, sadly, Delum has been extremely wounded, still behaving like a dog. He's trying to get to one of the dogs that Karsa has, who was in a fight, who lost a leg, and because that is the main dog who he made yield, called Nor, because it seems to be his partner, his mate, he saved that dog. He could have killed it, the one with 3 legs, but he doesn't. He saves it, and she's badly hurt, and Delum is trying to get to her. He's crawling to try and get to her, and all these other villagers and what have you, these lowlanders, are just basically booting Delum to pieces. And Karsa watches this happen, and he goes after the people that have done. They all split up and so, and he gets a few of them, but there's one, and that's how he ends up getting caught, because he chases that particular person. So yeah, now he's back in the village, in the slave pit, chained with a couple of others. You've got the Sungid, who are currently like fishermen with the nets. They're working as slaves, catching the food, etc. So they, at any point, will be back in this slave pit and chained. But for now, Karsa is trying to get himself free, and he hears a voice across from him, which turns out to be someone called Torald Nom. But for now, he's pretending to be a Sungid, saying that he just wants to die. There's a few others who don't really have anything about them to speak. He's the only one that does. And he's saying how his wishes are to die. So Karsa obliges. He's turning this log so that their chains tighten and they get pulled to where the water is so that they can drown. And at the last minute, the person says, "Now I've changed my mind," and he fights his way back out. But then it's revealed to Karsa, that this is a Daru guy called Torald Nom. So is this Darujistan guy, Torald Nom, related to Ralik Nom? Or is that just sort of an assassin's title? So you have your name and then you're called Nom because you're an assassin. Or is Torald Nom related to Ralik Nom from Gardens of the Moon? I'm just curious, because they're both from Darujistan, both with the surname Nom, if that applies. Or maybe that's, like I say, just a title for an assassin. I'm not sure. So Karsa eventually does manage to escape. He actually takes Torald Nom with him. Torald Nom he tells to go about his business, go on his own way, and Karsa wants revenge for Delum and Bayroth. So he goes on a mad killing spree. He finds some Sunyid weaponry. He finds some blood oil. It can be used to make your blades sharper, but also if you ingest it somehow, it kind of performs, I think, I'm not very well up on drugs, but it kind of performs maybe like LSD or something like that. It gives you this sudden boost of energy or endorphins, or I don't know, just suddenly boosts you and makes you twice like the person you were. And that's, as he's rubbing this blood oil onto his swords, he kisses the blades, and he gets this instant rush of adrenaline. And as next thing you know, he's kind of sat in this attic, and he must have gone through 6 houses and just left a sea of bodies behind him. And he doesn't really remember it because he's on this high from this blood oil. And then he goes to this other building, breaks his way in, but makes a very vital mistake in doing this. No doubt he will escape again. I have no fear of that. But he breaks into this particular building, which is filled with Malazan soldiers who are kind of being, what would you call it? Penalised. Kind of being penalised for being drunk on duty. So they're in there kind of having a time out. And this is the building that Casa breaks into. So they have a mage with them called Ebron. They have a mage called Ebron who tries some magic on Casa, but because he's protected by Urgel, it just kind of bounces off. And then the rest of them sort of throw down a noose. It gets around his neck. It does tighten, but they don't manage to get him because he's a big guy, Casa. He's called a giant by everybody else. We get the impression that he's this very big guy. So he gets out of this noose, and then they throw a net on him. And this net is meant for these giant worms. But it seems to actually subdue Casa, but without causing him too much discomfort. And Ebron is quite surprised because anybody else under this netting would be screaming in pain. And if it was just one of the Malazans, they would be in this netting, firstly screaming in pain, and then secondly would probably turn to like a big pile of mush. But Casa is literally just sitting under there, taking it in his stride. At first, he's in a little bit of pain, and then he's fine. And as we come to the end of this chapter, and the captain kindly arrives, who's like in charge of these guys, and in the meantime, Master Silgar has been called to come and get his slave, but he wants to banter and give them money, so they decide to charge him for bribery, because it's a crime, because this place is now under the Malazan Empire. They take Casa with them, and he's not feeling the pain of this net anymore, so he is probably going to escape again. And I have a feeling that when they get him into this wagon to transport him, he will come across Torald Nom again, and they probably will escape together. So I think it will be Casa and Torald Nom together for the rest of this story, being as his two first warriors who were accompanying him have now died. So yeah, it's not too bad. It's very much a one POV type story in this one. I have to say, I do kind of prefer Stephen Erickson's multi POVs. I just find them much more interesting to read along with, but the one person POVs are kind of a faster pace, because you're not having to understand 3 different names for one character and who you jump into and from for. So there are sort of pros and cons to both styles of how Stephen Erickson writes. But yeah, so far so good. I'm up to chapter 3 now, so I will update you soon. So we're back with chapter 3 of House of Chains. We left at chapter 2 with Captain Kindly arriving in Silgar and arresting Silgar. So they're now on the way to a ship, and I found out that we're at the time of when the Battle of Pale is actually over. And there's these Malazan officers and the Ashuk regiment who wanted to be there, but apparently Empress Lasine won't have them there because they are from the 7 cities. So they wanted to be part of the war at Pale, but Empress Lasine hasn't allowed them because they're from the 7 cities, and obviously she's not a fan. So we've got Casa and Torvlin on a wagon. Casa is sort of chained down so that he can't use his brute force to get himself off, because they are all essentially scared of him. But there's a funny little back and forth between one of the Malazan officers called Shard and Torvald, and it's about Torvald potentially being a claw and reporting back to Lasine, and he's sort of having a bit of banter with Shard, saying, you know, the treatment's not been nice, and you actually did call her a bitch, so I'm just going to put all this in my report. And I found that quite humorous. I like Torvald's sense of humour. He's got quite a good sense of humour. He makes light of situations that aren't necessarily light. So he's kind of getting these Malazan to think that he's potentially a claw. And when they do eventually get onto the boat, the sailors on the boat too believe that he may well be a claw. So now we're on the boat and we're heading to Malanteus. When they reach there, Corvold starts telling starts telling Kaza about the 3 tribes that settled there, being the Nati or Nathai, the Genabare, and the Kohive. And basically to keep them from killing each other, to keep them from each other's throats, the Malazans and 3 companies from the Ashok regiment have been posted there to obviously prevent inner fighting amongst those different clans. But then it goes on for the captain to explain to Corvold that there seems to be some upset as the Crimson Guard are now in Melantius, stirring up the Kohive. So it seems that Corvold believes that this will be trouble for the Malazans, because they're going to have to potentially step in or do something towards the Crimson Guard or towards the Kohive. So that's not going to bode well, apparently, in Melantius. So we do what we need to do there. We're picking up some of the second guard. Once that's been done, we go back, and next thing we know that there's a storm looming. And during this time, Kaza keeps coming in and out of consciousness. He's meant to be play acting that a bump on his head has caused him to end up like his friend Dellum. But in actual fact, it seems that his thought process and him doing what he's doing is actually doing that to him. It's actually sending him into this unconscious state of where he is sort of seeing things and talking to his gods. So the ship they leave on hits a storm. Now the captain of the ship is speaking to Corvold and telling him to tell Kaza to stop this storm. They believe it's him creating the storm, but he's sort of in this other place. You know, he's not present in what's happening right now. But Corvold, to satisfy their needs, and potentially might believe it himself, is telling Kaza to stop what he's doing, stop the storm. You know, if you stop, they'll let you go, they'll unchain you, they'll free you. Just stop it. But the storm hits the ship anyway, and it ends up as a wreck. And Corvold manages to keep Kaza on like a raft. He is still chained, so that's causing problems because obviously that is sinking the raft. But Corvold is managing through bits and bobs what he's doing of finding planks and so on and so forth, managing to actually keep Kaza afloat. Excuse me. And then Kaza again keeps going in and out of consciousness, and on this one particular time he goes to his god, which is Urgel, and Urgel says that he is not a worthy warrior and he is denied by his god now, and he will be surrendered by them. And it seems like if he dies, they're not bothered, or they may actually even push for him to die. But it seems to me like the more we read on that he lives on because of his Darujistan friend, Corvold. He seems like his friend is helping him carry on. But I also think the gods are not entirely done with him yet. I think this is just a bit of a telling off to give him a bit of a kick up the arse, really, and just say, come on, you're supposed to be this warrior for me. You know, stop surrendering to your madness and pull your socks up and get crack on with it. And then they find themselves in this place of abandoned ships in some like chest high water, and Corvold goes off to investigate this particular ship. But as he's doing this, Kaza is kind of sinking, so he rigs up this makeshift sort of rope round the chains to try and keep him without drowning, and it seems to work for a little while. So Corvold is having a scout round on this ship, and a great big fish shows up, and Corvold has to find some sort of way to get himself free. And it's a catfish, it's a massive catfish, and he managed to do it, and he manages to take out the catfish. And Corvold is sort of in awe of him because this catfish is huge. And and they manage to get onto the ship together. And somehow, by harpooning the fish, or at least this is how I understand it, it manages to pull the ship that they're actually on, that's sort of banked. The ship starts to move, but unfortunately the catfish is going too fast, and the ship starts to move too fast, so then it collides into another ship, and they then obviously have to sort themselves out, get into this other ship. But this other ship that they end up on is the ship with the headless oarsman. So, are we now crossing over again to what happened in Deadhouse Gates, where we're at the same place? And if memory serves me correctly, correct me if I'm wrong by all means, this is where Felasin and Bodin and Heboric got on the ship, or at least found Fiddler, I think, on the ship and boarded that ship. I think I'm correct in saying that. I could be wrong, but I think I'm correct. And this is where Bodin sort of left them because Felasin told him to leave, and he was under orders as her sort of bodyguard to protect her, and then she sort of told him she no longer wants him. So he left, but he didn't completely leave. He sort of pretended to leave. I think this is the same place. So we have that tie in there again to Deadhouse Gates. And I've also realised, when I said Icarium before, it's the Jaghurt. It's the Jaghurt with his name escapes me. But there's two of them in Deadhouse Gates. They walk together, and Icarium is one of them, who's very, very troubled, and his friend has to look after him. And that's who they're talking about, is that character from Deadhouse Gates, and he's the one who's done the glyphs in the cave. So obviously that denotes his past somehow, but I was under the impression that he was being protected because he had a very jaded past, a very destructive past. But this doesn't seem, if it was him who wrote these glyphs, that doesn't seem destructive at all. Or maybe following on from creating those clans, he then became destructive, in fact too destructive, and it took over him. That's a possibility. I've literally just thought of that now, so that's a possibility. Yeah, maybe that's the thing. I just can't remember his friend's name. I know it begins with an M. I just can't remember it right now. So yeah, anyway, so that's where we're at, and then so they're on this other ship. It's got all the headless guys on it. It's still got the captain, etc., on there, who is the mage, who is wielding this magic, this necromancer. And Carcer takes them out. He kills them. Harpoons the captain, which is how he was found, if we remember, in Deadhouse Gates. Harpoon still to his chair. And they don't want anything to do with that. They just take what provisions they can, get back on their little boat and continue. And that's left. But as that's left, the gods, the six, show up, and they're talking about how they have to keep Carcer on his path, and it seems like Urgal is there saying, yes, but we're being followed, we're being hunted, and we need to be cautious. Yes, we need to keep him on his path, but we're being hunted and need to be cautious. So somebody somewhere is hunting these 7 gods, the faces of the rock. So I don't know as yet who that could be. Maybe the crippled god. I'm not too sure. So we've come off the necromancy ship. We're back on our little ship, our little boat, I should say, and we're following the current so far, but then we're trying to fight against it. But then we hear shouting, and we meet back up with Master let me find his name. Master Silgal, I think it is. Master Silgar, and Damisk and Bornog. And they are seeming shipwrecked on this in this water, and they're saying that Silgar can open up a warren and potentially save them. So obviously Carcer gives him a bit of a threatening, try anything funny and I'll chop your head off kind of thing. I owe you one anyway, but so they get on the boat and off they go, and then Silgar points, there's the warren, open it. So they head towards that. He opens the warren, and they end up in more water. And this is where they end up in with the this is where they end up, sorry, with the Otateral Sea. Where they end up through this warren is the Otateral Sea. So they find a beach. I mean, there's a shark in the meantime that attacks one of the members. It attacks Borog, but it seems Borog's already dead. So Carcer kind of kills this shark, practically for no reason, I'd say, but it was attacking Borog, and Carcer's seemingly coming around to being a bit hero rather than anti-hero now. I'm not sure, but he's seeming to change his mind, and the gods are picking up on these changes, and they kind of seem to maybe want to keep him as he was and not this new version. So we're going to have to see how that plays out, because it seems like Carcer's getting a little bit of a conscience and he's having some empathy now, whereas at the start he didn't. So they get onto a beach. Carcer says he's going to go for a walk and have a nosy round. Torval joins him, and they come across this tower, and they also come across the fossils. Now, I'm not sure if this was the same thing that Heboric and Felisin found. They found what I believe was a hand, and I think it was a god that they found. I think it was a hand. This is more of fossils and like a rib cage, that kind of thing. So they find this and a tower, and then they meet the keeper. The keeper does go by a different name, but for now, and it does say it in the book, but for now we're calling him the keeper, because he has, in a way, faked his own death so that he can hide from whoever he needs to hide from. And he's just living in this tower, happy as you like, and it's very close to, let me see if I can say this, Earlyton. That's what I'm saying it as, Earlyton. Earlyton is not that far away, and that's where, after they have this meeting with the keeper, who kind of warns Torval that it's dangerous to be with Carcer. He seems to have these chains, and attached to these chains are destruction. But Torval would still stay with his friend, but he has this feeling now like he wants to get back to his family. And he does clarify that he does have a cousin who is an assassin. So I can only assume that that is Ralik Nom, from the House of Nom. The name Nom, Ralik Nom, Tavol Nom. I'm not saying his name right there, am I? Let me find it. Tovrul Nom. There we go. I'm really struggling with these names because I'm not used to them yet. As soon as I get used to them, I'll be okay. But it's just the getting used to some new names that just tongue-ties me. So yes, that's where we're at. At the end of chapter 3, we are having a conversation. Carcer is having a conversation with Torval, and they're talking about the pair of them going to Earlyton. However, Torval is going to get on a ship, a Malazan ship. He's going to work his way onto it, get on the ship and go back to Darujistan to see his family. Whereas Carcer has to find out the truth of what is happening. What are his dreams about? Why does the keeper tell Torval about the dreams that he's having, which are like this feeling of chains and entrapment and hands pulling him down in the water? And he wants to find out what the truth is. He knows that Urgel is guiding him, but he wants to know what the truth of it all is. So that's where we've ended on chapter 3, and that's where I'm going to leave it for today. It's a very quick read for me because it is one POV. So I am getting through this a lot quicker than I would like the Memories of Ice, where it's multi-POV, and that takes me a little while longer because there's so much going on. There's still a lot going on, but because it's from one person point of view, I'm managing to get through it a lot quicker. So I probably will have this one done quicker than I did Memories of Ice. That doesn't mean to say that I'm not paying the same amount of attention to it. I am. It just means that it'll be done probably quicker because I read this style quicker than I do multi-POV. And we all know, if you're a Steven Erikson fan, we all know that his multi-POVs literally do mean multi-POVs. We're talking 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 characters all at once. So it does take a little bit more time and attention for you to sort of concentrate on what's going on with who and how this ties to that. But yes, it's still good. At the moment, there's little bits and pieces of action. I must admit I am missing the action from Memories of Ice. But who knows, further along in this book we may get some more action. I hope we manage to get back to Trull Sengar. I hope we get back to the Tista Dur. I hope he's not gone now just because he was chained at the beginning. I hope we find more out about him. But yeah, that's where we're at, chapter 3. So I will leave it there. Thank you all for watching. I'm in a little bit of pain as well today. The fibro's playing up a bit. Thank you all for watching as long as you have been. If you've watched the Memories of Ice vlogs, I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for that. If you are continuing to watch along the journey of House of Chains, you are superb people. I thank you so much. And I will post again tomorrow when we start with chapter 4. Take care of yourselves. Have a great day. And I will see you all bright and early tomorrow. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. We'll link somewhere here another video for you to watch. If you fancy that, please click on that. And as usual, thank you for all your support. Till next time, bye bye.